I'm Megan, 32, working 60-hour weeks in corporate marketing that left me drained. When my grandmother passed last year, she left me her mountain cabin, my childhood happy place. After closing a brutal campaign, I desperately needed solitude. 6 hours of driving later, I dragged my exhausted body through the front door, only to find chaos. The bathroom was gutted to the studs. The master bedroom walls were half demolished. Worse, someone's laptop sat on the kitchen counter, still warm. I wasn't alone. Before I dive into this nightmare, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had your safe haven violated. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this family betrayal spiraled into something far darker than I could have imagined. The construction mess was worse than I initially thought. Power tools scattered across plastic-covered floors, exposed wiring, pipes jutting from broken walls. But what disturbed me more were the personal touches: a half-empty coffee mug with lipstick on the rim, a charging cable that wasn't mine, men's work boots by the door. I carefully stepped around demolition debris, my heart racing. This wasn't some random break-in. Someone had been systematically occupying and altering my property. In the kitchen, I found a business card magneted to the refrigerator. Reynolds Family Construction. Quality you can trust. I immediately called the number. Reynolds Construction. A gruff voice answered. This is Megan Clark. I'm at my cabin and I want to know why you've torn apart my property without my permission. A pause. Miss Clark? I thought we were dealing with Tyler Clark. Your brother hired us 3 weeks ago. My blood ran cold. I don't have a brother named Tyler. The contractor, who introduced himself as David Reynolds, sounded equally confused. Tyler Clark showed us documentation proving he co-owned the property. He said his sister, you knew about the renovations, but couldn't be present to oversee them. That's impossible. I'm an only child. Ma'am, he had paperwork. Deed documents with both your names. Said it was a surprise renovation for when you visited. After a tense conversation, David agreed to suspend work until we sorted things out. I hung up and frantically searched through the kitchen drawer where my grandmother kept important papers. Everything looked in order until I noticed subtle differences in the property deed. A copy had been placed on top of the original, listing both Megan Clark and Tyler Clark as inheritors. Hands shaking, I called the only family I had left, my cousin Rachel. We weren't particularly close, but she was the only one who might have insight into this Tyler person. Megan? What's wrong? Rachel answered, sounding concerned. I explained the situation, my voice rising with each detail. Stay there, she said firmly. I'm an hour away. Don't touch anything else. Rachel arrived looking unusually nervous. She paced the living room, avoiding the construction mess and my direct questions, until finally sitting heavily on the couch. There's something you need to know, she said quietly. Something your parents never told you. What are you talking about? Rachel took a deep breath. You do have a brother. Tyler is real. The room seemed to tilt around me. That's not possible. Your parents had him when they were teenagers, before they were married. They gave him up for adoption. I felt like I'd been punched. And you knew about this? For how long? Rachel couldn't meet my eyes. I found out a few years ago, going through your mom's things after she died. There were letters. And you never thought to tell me? My voice cracked with betrayal. It wasn't my place. Your parents chose to keep it secret. I tried processing this bombshell while examining more evidence around the cabin. Family photos had been taken down from walls, examined, and replaced slightly crooked. Drawers containing my grandmother's mementos were organized differently than I remembered. We should call Brian, Rachel suggested. He's a lawyer. He can help sort this out legally. While Rachel made dinner, claiming cooking would calm her nerves, I paced the living room. Something wasn't adding up about her sudden helpfulness and convenient legal connection. On a hunch, I glanced at Rachel's phone when she left it on the counter to use the bathroom. My stomach dropped. Multiple text messages to someone named Tyler lit up her screen. The most recent, she's here, stick to the plan. When Rachel returned, I confronted her, phone in hand. You've been in contact with him? This was a setup? Rachel's helpful facade crumbled. You don't understand. Tyler deserves to know his family. He deserves part of the inheritance. Your parents shut him out completely. It wasn't fair. So you decided to help a stranger claim my property. Behind my back? He's not a stranger. He's your brother. And you've always had everything handed to you while he had nothing. Our argument escalated until Rachel stormed out, claiming I was being unreasonable and selfish. Tyler just wants to connect with his roots. This cabin means something to him too. The door slammed, leaving me alone in a half-demolished cabin, with the sickening knowledge that this was just the beginning of whatever Rachel and this Tyler had planned. After Rachel left, I sank onto the couch, trying to process everything. My parents, who I thought I knew completely, had another child they never mentioned. Not once. Not even in their final days. I scrolled through mental images of family gatherings, holidays, quiet moments when truth might have been shared, searching for hints I might have missed. Nothing. Around midnight, I forced myself to examine what Rachel had said more critically. She claimed she discovered Tyler's existence while sorting through my mother's things after she died 3 years ago. Mom and Dad had both passed within months of each other. Cancer for her, heart attack for him shortly after. Rachel had helped me clean out their house, volunteering to sort through personal papers while I handled larger logistics. Now I wondered what else she had found and kept from me. I called my parents' old attorney, reaching his answering service. Too late for answers tonight. I moved through the cabin, securing what I could despite the construction chaos. Every creaking floorboard made me jump. In my grandmother's study, thankfully untouched by the renovation, I began searching through her personal records. Grandma had been meticulously organized, keeping family history in labeled albums and journals. If there was any record of a secret grandchild, she might have preserved it. After an hour of searching, I found a small, locked box in the back of her closet. The key wasn't immediately apparent, but I remembered Grandma always kept important keys in a hollowed-out book on her nightstand. Sure enough, a tiny key was hidden inside Great Expectations. The box contained old letters correspondence between my grandmother and my mother dating back over 30 years. With trembling hands, I read through them chronologically. The truth emerged in fragments. The adoption agency assures us the baby will go to a good family. David and I can't raise a child now, Mom. We're barely out of high school. I know it hurts, but this is for the best. Someday, when we're ready for a family. The Taylors seem like wonderful people. They'll give him everything we can't. My parents had been just 18 when Tyler was born. They placed him with a family named Taylor before marrying 2 years later. I came along 4 years after that, apparently when they were ready. The final letter in the stack was most shocking, dated just months before my mother's death. Someone claiming to be Tyler contacted me through one of those DNA websites. I don't know what to do. Dad doesn't want to open old wounds. Is it too late to know my first child? My mother had known. She'd discovered Tyler's existence shortly before she died and never told me. The betrayal cut deep. As I replaced the letters, something else caught my eye, a small notebook wedged in the corner of the box. It contained names and phone numbers, including one labeled Rachel NEW, with a different number than I had for her. I dialed it, wondering if it was outdated. A man answered. Hello. I hung up immediately, heart pounding. The voice wasn't familiar, but the fact that someone answered a number, supposedly belonging to Rachel, raised new questions. I tried calling Rachel's regular number, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a deliberately vague message. We need to talk more about the family history. Call me. Sleep was impossible. I made coffee and continued searching the cabin, looking for any other evidence of tampering or surveillance. In the living room bookshelf, I noticed several family photo albums had been rearranged. One contained pictures of my parents as teenagers' images I'd rarely examined closely. In one, my mother stood on the high school football field, visibly pregnant in a loose-fitting dress, my father's arm around her. They looked scared and young. The photo was partially tucked behind another, as if someone had recently examined it and hastily replaced it. By dawn, I had pieced together more of the story. My parents had given up their first child but seemingly regretted it later in life. My mother had been contacted by Tyler shortly before her death, and Rachel, my supposedly loyal cousin, had been in communication with him for months, possibly years, hiding her involvement with a separate phone. As the morning light strengthened, I heard a vehicle approaching. I moved to the window, expecting to see Rachel returning. Instead, an unfamiliar truck pulled up. A man stepped out, looking around cautiously before approaching the cabin. My brother had arrived. The floorboards creaked as I backed away from the window. I had seconds to decide: confront him or hide. Instinct took over. I grabbed a heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace and positioned myself behind the door, heart hammering against my ribs. The lock jiggled. A key turned. He had a key to my cabin. The door swung open slowly, and a man stepped inside. In his early 30s, he moved with cautious familiarity, scanning the living room before softly calling out, "Rachel?" I remained frozen, watching as he moved deeper into the cabin. There was something unsettling about seeing him navigate the space, knowing which floorboards squeaked, automatically sidestepping the coffee table. He'd been here multiple times before. When he approached my grandmother's antique trunk, kneeling to open it, I stepped forward. "Looking for something?" I demanded, poker raised. He spun around, hands instinctively raising. "Whoa! You must be Megan, and you must be trespassing." I kept the poker steady, though my hands were shaking. His face, which had registered shock, softened into something disarmingly charismatic. There was an undeniable resemblance to my father around the eyes and jawline. "I'm Tyler," he said simply. "I believe we're related. Related doesn't mean you can break into my property and tear it apart." He lowered his hands slowly. "I can explain everything. Could we maybe talk without the medieval weaponry?" Something in his calm demeanor made me hesitate. If he was dangerous, he was hiding it well. I lowered the poker slightly, but kept it in hand. "Start explaining." Tyler nodded toward the kitchen. "Can I make some coffee?" It's a long story. I followed him, maintaining distance, as he confidently navigated to the cupboard containing coffee supplies. Another sign he'd spent time here. As the coffee brewed, Tyler spoke. "I was adopted at birth. My adoptive parents, good people. The Taylors told me I was adopted from the beginning. But when they both died in a car accident when I was 16, I entered the foster system." He poured 2 mugs of coffee, sliding one across the counter to me. Foster care was difficult. 7 homes in 2 years. When I turned 18, I was basically on my own, worked odd jobs, eventually got my GED. His voice carried a practiced vulnerability. 3 years ago, I did one of those DNA ancestry tests, trying to find my birth family. "And you found my mother," I said, remembering the letter. Surprise flickered across his face. "Yes." She responded once, told me she needed time. Then I learned she'd passed away. "So you decided to track down your inheritance instead?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Tyler's expression hardened momentarily before returning to earnest openness. "I wanted to know where I came from. When I learned about this place, a family cabin where our parents spent time, it felt important. Important enough to forge documents and pretend you co-own it?" "I never forged anything," he insisted. "Rachel helped me navigate the legal aspects," she said, "since I was born before any formal will was created. I have legitimate claim to family property." For the next hour, Tyler shared stories of foster homes, of searching for belonging, of dreams deferred. He produced adoption papers that looked legitimate. He showed me family resemblances, the same slight crook in our pinky fingers that our father had, similar facial expressions. I found myself thawing despite my suspicions. If even half of what he said was true, his life had been considerably harder than mine. "I just want to know my history," he said, gazing around the cabin. "This place holds so many memories I never got to make." "That doesn't explain gutting the bathroom and bedroom." Tyler looked embarrassed. "The renovation was Rachel's idea. She thought if I improved the property, it would smooth things over when we finally met. Show good faith." As our conversation wound down, Tyler stood to leave. "I understand this is overwhelming. Take time to process. Rachel has my number when you're ready to talk more." I noticed him glance toward my grandmother's bedroom as he headed for the door. Something about that look calculating. Assessing triggered renewed suspicion. After he left, I immediately checked the bedroom. The antique jewelry box on my grandmother's dresser stood open. The emerald necklace she'd promised would be mine someday, a family heirloom passed through generations, was missing. The missing emerald necklace confirmed my worst suspicions. Whatever Tyler's true motives, he wasn't above theft. I immediately called Brian, the lawyer Rachel had mentioned. Despite my growing distrust of Rachel, I needed legal expertise. Construction workers gutting your property without permission? That's criminal trespassing and destruction of property, Brian said when I explained the situation, carefully omitting Rachel's involvement for now. And if this Tyler person took anything, that's theft. We should contact the sheriff. I need to understand what I'm dealing with first, I insisted. Can you meet me at the cabin tomorrow? Brian arrived early the next morning, a compact man with shrewd eyes and a professional demeanor. He inspected the construction damage, reviewed my grandmother's will, and examined the forged documents Tyler had apparently created. The will is straightforward, Brian confirmed. Your grandmother left the cabin specifically to you, not to family heirs or any vague designation. Even if Tyler could prove biological relation, which would require DNA testing, he has no legal claim here. So the contractor's story about Tyler showing ownership documentation, forgery, and fraud, Brian nodded. Prosecutable offenses. We drove to the county records office, where Brian's professional connections granted us access to property inquiries. Sure enough, someone had been researching the cabin's ownership history extensively over the past 6 months. As we left the records office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back off if you know what's good for you. This isn't just about the cabin, I showed Brian, who frowned deeply. This crosses into criminal intimidation. You shouldn't stay at the cabin alone. I'm not leaving. That's what they want. Then I'm staying with you, he insisted. I have a security system we can install temporarily. That evening, as Brian set up motion-detecting cameras around the property, I researched Tyler online. His social media presence was minimal, but through advanced searches, I discovered concerning patterns. 3 different regional newspapers contained small articles about inheritance disputes involving a man matching Tyler's description, though the names varied slightly each time. When Brian returned inside, I showed him my findings. Classic con artist methodology, he observed. They target properties with complicated family histories, insert themselves as lost relatives, then manipulate their way into ownership or cash settlements. But the DNA connection to my mother could be real, which makes him particularly dangerous. A true biological connection creates plausibility, but it doesn't give him rights to your property. We developed a plan to confront Tyler with falsified information mentioning a non-existent clause in my grandmother's will that would specifically disinherit any previously unknown heirs. The idea was to gauge his reaction, potentially revealing his true intentions. As Brian made dinner, I noticed his phone continually buzzing. He kept checking it discreetly, responding with rapid texts. When he stepped outside for better reception, suspicion gnawed at me. I glanced at his briefcase, partially open on the kitchen counter. A legal notepad was visible, with Rachel's name and phone number circled several times. Beside it was a roughly sketched timeline that included dates corresponding to when my grandmother had passed away. When Brian returned, I casually asked, "How do you know Rachel exactly?" He hesitated just a fraction too long. Professional connection. She consulted me about some family estate matters last year. Interesting, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She never mentioned knowing a lawyer before yesterday. That night, after Brian fell asleep on the couch, I checked his phone. The password was obvious his birthday, which I'd noticed on his bar association card. The text messages confirmed my fears. Dozens of exchanges with Rachel, discussing me, the cabin, and Tyler. Their most recent exchange was particularly damning. Rachel, she's getting suspicious. Found anything useful in the will? Brian, working on it. Keeping her focused on Tyler for now. Rachel, good. Don't let her check the property lines. Jay says we need another week. The betrayal stung worse knowing I'd trusted Brian to help me. I quietly gathered evidence, photographing the texts and documents in his briefcase. I needed to understand what property lines had to do with anything, and who Jay might be. I slipped out at dawn, leaving a note claiming I'd gone for groceries. Instead, I drove straight to the county surveyor's office when they opened. The clerk was initially unhelpful until I explained someone might be attempting fraud related to my property. What I discovered was shocking. Someone had filed a petition to redraw the boundary lines of my grandmother's property, claiming historical surveys were inaccurate. The petition wasn't under Tyler's name, but James Wilson, Rachel's husband. The clerk explained that if successful, the petition would reduce my cabin's acreage by nearly half, transferring valuable lakefront access to the adjacent property, which, according to records, had been purchased 3 months ago by a limited liability company. I requested copies of all documents, then called Mike Reynolds, the construction company owner, as I drove back to the cabin. "Miss Clark, I was about to call you," Mike said when he answered. "Something didn't sit right about that job. I did some checking on the permits, and they're problematic. Forged signatures, backdated approvals. Can you meet me at the cabin? I think we've both been manipulated." Mike arrived before I returned. I found him examining the construction work, his expression grim. In his 50s with weather-worn features, he projected straightforward honesty. "This isn't my company's work," he said immediately. "Someone used our name, but my crew never did this. This is amateur demolition, designed to make the place uninhabitable." I showed him the documents I'd gathered. "I think my cousin Rachel, her husband James, and a con artist named Tyler are working together to force me out and claim the property." Mike studied the boundary petition. "The property line they're trying to establish would run right through your well access. Without water rights, the cabin's value would plummet. Why target this property specifically?" Mike pointed to a recent geological survey attached to the petition. "See this notation? Preliminary mineral testing indicates potential rare earth deposits. If they're substantial, the land could be worth millions," I finished, pieces clicking together. Mike nodded solemnly. "My mother faced a similar scam when natural gas was discovered near her farm. I recognized the tactics." His jaw tightened. "I hate seeing family turn on each other for money." As we discussed options, I noticed Brian's car pulling up outside. Mike followed my gaze. "Someone you trust?" he asked. "Not anymore. That's the lawyer working with them." "Back entrance?" Mike suggested immediately. I led him through the kitchen to the rear deck. "I need to gather evidence before confronting them." "I can help," Mike offered. "My sister Lisa is a private investigator. She specializes in property fraud cases." For the first time since discovering the construction chaos, I felt a glimmer of hope. I finally had an ally I could trust. After escaping through the back, Mike drove me to his office where we called his sister Lisa. She agreed to meet us that afternoon, suggesting we avoid the cabin until she arrived. "If they're monitoring the property, they'll know you've left with Mike. That gives us a window to prepare." Unable to return to the cabin, I convinced Mike to drop me off nearby instead. "I need to see what they do when they think I'm not watching." Mike reluctantly agreed, but insisted on lending me his company truck with tinted windows. "Park at Wilson's Ridge. You can observe the cabin from there without being spotted. Lisa and I will meet you at 3. From my vantage point on the ridge, I watched Brian exit the cabin, making frustrated phone calls. An hour later, Rachel and James arrived. They appeared to argue briefly before entering. Shortly after, construction workers I didn't recognize pulled up. Using the binoculars Mike had provided, I observed these men unloading equipment not for repairs, but more demolition. One worker carried what looked like industrial plumbing fixtures toward the cabin's foundation. When Mike and Lisa arrived at our meeting spot, I shared what I'd seen. "They're accelerating their timeline," Lisa noted. She was a sharply observant woman in her 40s with the same straightforward manner as her brother. "The plumbing fixtures concern me. They could be planning to create water damage. Wouldn't insurance cover that?" I asked. "Not if they can prove negligence or unauthorized modifications," Lisa explained. "Which is exactly what they're setting up, a situation where you'd be forced to sell at a fraction of the property's value." We formulated a plan to return to the cabin with official-looking documentation Lisa created, suggesting an immediate county inspection of all construction work. The goal was to scare off the workers while gathering evidence. When we arrived, the foreman initially tried to block our entry, claiming to have proper authorization. Lisa presented the falsified inspection notice, and the man's demeanor changed instantly. "Look, I'm just doing what I was paid for," he said nervously. "And who exactly paid you?" Lisa pressed. "Guy named Johnson. Said he was the owner's husband." The foreman pulled out his phone, showing us a photo of the man who'd hired him, James Wilson, Rachel's husband. He said his wife inherited the place, but it needed work before they could sell. paid cash for us to fast-track the job. Lisa persuaded the foreman to provide copies of the work orders and receipts, which listed specific instructions. Remove all plumbing to main line. Disconnect electrical panel from master bedroom circuit. Remove support beam in bathroom, marked with red X. They weren't renovating, Mike said grimly. They were systematically destroying the cabin's infrastructure to make it uninhabitable and force a quick sale. The foreman, now genuinely concerned about his involvement in potential fraud, showed us security footage from his crew's first day. The camera had captured Tyler and Rachel walking the property, pointing out specific areas to target. More damning, the footage showed Rachel actively instructing workers on how to make the damage look like legitimate construction work. I can testify that these modifications violate building code, Mike offered, and that someone fraudulently used my company's name. As we documented the evidence, I noticed a figure watching from the woods, James Wilson. When he realized I'd spotted him, he quickly retreated toward a vehicle parked on the service road. They know we're building a case, Lisa warned. So what will they do next? I asked. Mike's expression darkened. When scammers get desperate, they typically escalate to more aggressive tactics. Intimidation, legal harassment, or they might try to discredit you, Lisa added. Make it seem like you're the problem. Her prediction proved alarmingly accurate. That evening, as we prepared documentation for the sheriff's department, Rachel arrived with Tyler and James. They brought another devastating weapon, a stack of legal papers. Rachel entered first, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Tyler followed, his charismatic smile nowhere in sight. James Wilson came last, clutching a leather portfolio and projecting an air of legal authority. Megan, Rachel began softly. We're worried about you. I remained silent, grateful that Lisa and Mike were in the kitchen, out of sight but recording everything. Breaking contact with your lawyer, Rachel continued. Making wild accusations, hiring strange men to intimidate the construction workers. She gestured toward the kitchen, clearly aware of Mike's presence. You mean the owner of the construction company whose name you forged on permits? I challenged. James stepped forward. Megan, we understand you're under tremendous stress. Grief affects people in different ways. I'm not grieving. I'm being systematically targeted by con artists, I replied evenly, including my own family. Tyler adopted a pained expression. See, this is exactly what we were afraid of. The paranoia, the accusations. James opened his portfolio. We didn't want to do this, but we're concerned about your mental health and safety. He produced a document with official-looking seals. This is a power of attorney established by your parents before their death, granting Rachel authority to make decisions regarding your welfare if you became unable to manage your affairs. My heart raced as I skimmed the document. It appeared legitimate, with what looked like my parents' signatures. This is forged, I stated, though doubt crept into my voice. The signatures looked convincing. It's been properly notarized, James insisted. Your parents were concerned about your episodes. Episodes? I echoed incredulously. Rachel's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. The family has always protected you, Megan. Kept your condition private. My condition? Anger flared, but underneath lurked fear. They were trying to gaslight me into questioning my own reality. You've struggled with paranoid episodes since college. Rachel continued smoothly. Remember your therapist, Dr. Lambert? The medication? I had seen a therapist briefly after a bad breakup in college, but never for paranoia, and certainly never took psychiatric medication. They were building an elaborate fiction, but with just enough truth to make it plausible to outsiders. Tyler chimed in. Your mother told me about your struggles before she died. She was worried about you being alone with the family property. As they continued weaving their narrative, I felt myself wavering. Their coordinated attack was devastatingly effective. Could there be elements of truth I didn't remember? Documents my parents created without telling me? Mike chose that moment to emerge from the kitchen. That's quite a performance, he said casually, especially considering I've got friends at the county records office who confirmed no such power of attorney was ever filed. James's confident facade faltered slightly. This is a private family matter. Is mineral rights theft a family matter too? Mike asked. Rachel's composure cracked first. You have no idea what you're talking about. The rare earth deposits, I said, watching comprehension and alarm flash across their faces. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not family connection. Not inheritance rights. Just greed. You've always had everything, Rachel snapped, mask finally dropping. Perfect daughter, perfect life. Tyler promised us half if we helped secure the property. Half of what exactly? I pressed. The mining rights, Rachel blurted before James could stop her. Do you have any idea what those minerals are worth? Millions. And you don't deserve all of it. James tried damage control. What Rachel means is that equitable distribution among family members? Save it, I interrupted, holding up my phone. I've been recording this entire conversation. Tyler lunged for the phone. I stumbled backward as he grabbed my wrist, twisting painfully. Mike intervened immediately, pulling Tyler away. In the scuffle, I dropped the phone, which Tyler quickly snatched. You've got nothing now, he snarled. All pretense of fraternal connection gone. What he didn't know was that Lisa had been recording from the kitchen as backup. But before I could feel any triumph, James played his final card. We've already filed for emergency mental health evaluation, he announced coldly. Deputies will be here tomorrow. Considering your family history of mental illness, which we have documented, and your increasingly erratic behavior, you'll be placed under observation while the court reviews the power of attorney. The three of them retreated, Tyler still clutching my phone. We're trying to help you, Megan, Rachel called as they left. You're not well. After they departed, I collapsed onto the couch, physically and emotionally drained. The threat of involuntary commitment, even temporarily, was terrifying. They can't really do that, can they? I asked Lisa, who had emerged from the kitchen. They can try, she admitted. But we have their confessions recorded. And I've seen this tactic before, claiming mental instability to discredit the rightful owner. Mike examined my wrist, which was already bruising from Tyler's grip. This physical assault gives us another advantage. We should document the injury and file a report immediately. Despite their reassurance, I felt defeated. Rachel knew enough real details about my life to make her lies convincing. If they managed to have me committed even briefly, they could accelerate their plans while I was detained. What about the mineral rights claim? I asked. Is that even real? Lisa nodded grimly. The geological survey I reviewed suggests significant potential deposits. Companies have been quietly buying properties throughout this region. Your grandmother's land is particularly promising according to magnetometer readings. So this isn't just a con, I realized. It's a calculated business venture. Mike helped me ice my wrist, while Lisa made calls to contacts in law enforcement. We need to move quickly, she advised. They're accelerating their timeline because they know we're onto them. That night, after Mike and Lisa insisted on staying to ensure my safety, I lay awake thinking about Rachel's betrayal. We'd grown up together, spent holidays and summers at this very cabin. How long had she resented me? How long had she been planning this? And Tyler, was he truly my biological brother, manipulated by Rachel's promises? Or was he purely a con artist who'd recognized an opportunity when Rachel contacted him? One thing was certain. I couldn't afford to underestimate them again. They'd shown exactly how far they were willing to go. By morning, Lisa had assembled an impressive amount of research. She'd worked through the night, contacting colleagues and accessing databases that revealed Tyler Johnson was actually Andrew Taylor, a convicted con artist with a pattern of inheritance scams across 3 states. He serves as a professional lost heir, Lisa explained as we reviewed her findings over coffee. He's worked with different accomplices, usually targeting properties with complex family situations or uncertain ownership. But the DNA connection to my mother could still be real, I pointed out. Possibly, Lisa conceded. He could be leveraging a genuine biological connection to run his usual scam. The Taylor family did adopt a baby boy 34 years ago from this region. Mike joined us, returning from a meeting with his company's attorney. Good news. We filed a cease and desist against the fraudulent use of Reynolds construction credentials, and I've got friends at the building department freezing all permits related to this property. Despite these small victories, we still faced the immediate threat of Rachel and James's petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation. Lisa had confirmed through contacts that they'd actually filed the paperwork. Their case is flimsy, Lisa assured me. but we need to be proactive rather than reactive. We spread documents across the kitchen table, examining my grandmother's will for any vulnerabilities. Lisa discovered something concerning in the fine print. There's an unusual clause here about all living descendants, she noted, pointing to a section I'd overlooked. It's in reference to personal effects, not the property itself, but it creates ambiguity they could exploit. Could Tyler or Andrew use that to make a claim? If he could prove biological relation, potentially yes for the personal items, not the real estate. But that's enough of a foothold for a lengthy legal battle. The realization hit me. That's why he stole grandmother's emerald necklace. He's establishing possession of an heirloom. Lisa nodded grimly. Classic tactic. Possession creates a presumption of ownership. We needed to definitively disprove Tyler's relationship claims. A DNA test would be the most straightforward approach, but getting him to submit to one voluntarily seemed unlikely now that the pretense had been abandoned. As we strategized, I remembered something important from my family medical history. My father had a rare blood type AB negative. Less than 1% of the population has it. I inherited it from him. If Tyler really is my biological brother with the same father, he would likely share that marker, Lisa finished, eyes lighting up. That's something we can potentially verify without his cooperation. Medical records from his past hospitalizations might be accessible through proper legal channels. Mike suggested another approach. What if we set a trap? Give them what they think they want, but on our terms. The plan took shape gradually. I would appear to have an emotional breakdown, not difficult given the stress of recent events, and reach out to Rachel apologetically. I would suggest a family meeting at the cabin to sort things out, creating an opportunity to gather all parties in one place with recording devices present. Lisa reinforced the plan with legal preparation, drafting documents to immediately file for restraining orders and fraud charges once we had sufficient recorded evidence. We also need to address the mental health petition, she reminded us. The hearing is scheduled for Monday morning. I have a contact at the county health department, Mike offered. Let me see if she can help expedite a psychological evaluation from a legitimate professional. A clean bill of mental health before their hearing would undermine their entire strategy. As we finalized details, my phone rang a local number I didn't recognize. Miss Clark? This is Deputy Simmons from the sheriff's office. We've received some concerning reports about your welfare. My stomach dropped. What kind of reports? Your cousin Rachel Wilson has expressed concern about your mental state. Says you've been making accusations against family members and exhibiting paranoid behavior. Before I could defend myself, the deputy continued. Now, I've known the Reynolds family for years. Mike called me this morning about some potential fraud involving his company name. Would you be willing to come down to the station to sort this out? The deputy's connection to Mike was an unexpected stroke of luck. At the station, I provided a formal statement about the construction fraud, Tyler's theft of the necklace, and the boundary line petition. Deputy Simmons took photographs of my bruised wrist and filed an assault report. The mental health petition is still active, he warned as I prepared to leave. I can't stop that process, but my report noting your clear and coherent state will be entered into record. When I returned to the cabin, Lisa had more news. I've identified the LLC that purchased the adjacent property, Wilton Minerals, registered to James Wilson and Tyler Johnson. They've been buying mineral rights throughout the county. So Rachel's husband was the mastermind? I asked. Possibly. Or they're all equal partners. Rachel knows the family history, James has legal expertise, and Tyler is the professional con artist. That evening, I made the hardest phone call of my life to Rachel. Every instinct screamed against trusting her again, but our plan required this performance. Rachel? It's Megan. I forced a tremor into my voice. I think I might be having one of my episodes. You were right. I'm seeing threats everywhere. Rachel's surprise was audible. Megan? Are you taking your medication? She slipped easily back into the fabricated narrative. I ran out. I lied. Everything's so confusing. Could we talk? All of us? I just want to understand what's happening. Rachel jumped at the opportunity. Of course. We're only trying to help. How about tomorrow evening at the cabin? James can bring the paperwork for the temporary guardianship. It's for your protection, Megan. After hanging up, I felt physically ill from the pretense. but Lisa assured me it was working perfectly. They think you're vulnerable. That's exactly what we need them to believe. As we prepared the cabin with hidden recording devices, Mike received an alarming call from his contact at the health department. Rachel and James filed an emergency mental health petition this afternoon, he reported grimly. They're claiming you're a danger to yourself and others. They've requested immediate intervention, not waiting for Monday's hearing. On what grounds? Lisa demanded. They provided statements claiming Megan threatened suicide after discovering family secrets and has been exhibiting increasing paranoia and aggression. My blood ran cold. Can they do that? They've accelerated the process, Lisa confirmed. With enough supposedly credible witnesses, yes. They're trying to have me committed before our family meeting tomorrow, I realized. Before we can get evidence, we were running out of time. Our carefully constructed plan suddenly faced a critical deadline. If deputies arrived with a psychiatric hold order before we gathered our evidence, everything would unravel. We need a contingency plan, Lisa determined, already dialing contacts. And we need it now. The cabin took on an eerie calm as we prepared for the confrontation. Lisa had convinced her contact at the sheriff's office to delay the psychiatric evaluation order until after the weekend, giving us our narrow window of opportunity. Remember, Lisa coached as we placed the final hidden microphones. Your job is to appear vulnerable and confused. Let them incriminate themselves. Mike had arranged for his most trusted foreman to park nearby as backup, ready to intervene if things turned dangerous. We'd prepared for every contingency we could imagine. The stage was set. I changed into looser clothing, applied makeup to suggest exhaustion, and deliberately left anxiety medication, actually just vitamins, visible on the counter, reinforcing their narrative while collecting evidence to destroy it. Rachel arrived first, her concern appearing genuine until the moment she thought no one was watching. When I stepped out to take medication, I glimpsed her quickly searching through papers on my desk. James and Tyler arrived together 20 minutes later. Tyler had abandoned his charismatic persona entirely, his expression cold and calculating. James carried his ever-present portfolio, projecting professional confidence. "Megan, how are you feeling?" Rachel asked, her voice dripping with artificial concern as we gathered around the dining table. Confused, I admitted truthfully, "Everything happened so fast." James nodded sympathetically. "That's why we've prepared these temporary guardianship papers. Just until you're stabilized." I stared at the documents he placed before me, fighting genuine nausea. What exactly would this mean? Rachel would make decisions regarding your health care and financial matters temporarily, James explained smoothly. It's quite standard in situations like yours. And the cabin? I asked hesitantly. Tyler interjected. We'd protect your interests, of course. The construction needs to be completed properly. And what about your claim to be my brother? I asked, looking directly at Tyler. Rachel answered before he could. We've discussed this, Megan. The DNA evidence is clear. Tyler is your half-brother. I never saw any DNA evidence, I noted. Your episodes affect your memory, Rachel said patronizingly. We showed you the results last month. The brazen lie was almost impressive. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept this explanation. I'm trying to remember everything. It's all so foggy. Sensing my apparent vulnerability, they became bolder. Tell me about our father, I said to Tyler. What do you remember about him? Tyler smiled sadly, launching into clearly rehearsed anecdotes about our father's distinctive mannerisms and habits. Some details were accurate, likely provided by Rachel, while others were completely fabricated. He had that genetic condition, right? I asked innocently. The one that affected his blood vessels? Tyler nodded emphatically. Exactly. The doctors were always monitoring it. I inherited it too, unfortunately. Marfan syndrome, I provided, naming a real genetic condition that my father absolutely did not have. Yes, that's it. Tyler agreed immediately. The doctors monitor me for it every year. I glanced at Lisa, who had entered under the pretense of being my home health aide. She gave an imperceptible nod, confirming the recording devices were capturing everything. Before I sign anything, I said, gesturing to James's documents, I want to understand what happens next. To the cabin. To grandmother's things. James launched into legal explanations about temporary management and asset protection, carefully avoiding direct mentions of selling or transferring ownership. Rachel added, "We just want to help you through this difficult time. Like we always have." "Always?" I echoed. "Since your first breakdown in college," Rachel elaborated, building on their fictional narrative. "Your parents worried so much about your stability." "Speaking of my parents," I said, deliberately steering the conversation, "I found grandmother's letters about Tyler's adoption." Tyler tensed visibly. "What letters?" "The correspondence with the adoption agency. About the Taylor family." I watched Tyler's face carefully. "It mentioned something about birth defects? Was that why they gave you up?" Tyler's composure slipped momentarily. "There were no birth defects. They were too young, that's all." "The letters mentioned developmental concerns," I pressed, completely fabricating now. "Did you experience those growing up?" Rachel touched Tyler's arm warningly, but he was already agitated. "There were no developmental issues," he snapped. "Stop trying to make it sound like there was something wrong with me. I'm just trying to understand my family medical history," I insisted innocently. "For instance, our father's rare blood type, AB negative," Tyler supplied confidently. "Same as mine," I nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. I have it too." Lisa chose that moment to interject. "Miss Clark, it's time for your medication." She placed a glass of water before me while subtly positioning her phone on the table, screen facing up. The phone displayed a text from Mike. "Sheriff's deputies 5 minutes out. Evidence secured." "Actually," I said, straightening my posture and abandoning the vulnerable act, "I'm feeling much clearer now. Clear enough to know that my father had O-positive blood type, not AB negative." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Tyler's eyes darted toward the door. "You've never been my brother," I continued. "Andrew Taylor." The name hit him like a physical blow. Before he could recover, I addressed Rachel. "And you've been helping a known con artist target your own family. Why? For mineral rights?" Rachel's face hardened. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Actually, I do." I gestured to Lisa, who placed several documents on the table. Geological surveys, mineral testing results, articles about Andrew Taylor's previous scams. "Oh, and the fake power of attorney document you created." James attempted damage control. "These accusations are symptoms of your condition, Megan. We're only trying to save it," Lisa interrupted, revealing her private investigator credentials. "Everything you've said has been recorded. We have evidence of conspiracy, fraud, document forgery, and attempted unlawful commitment." The sound of vehicles pulling up outside drew everyone's attention. Tyler bolted for the rear door, only to find Mike blocking his path. "Going somewhere?" Mike asked calmly. Sheriff's deputies entered through the front door, led by Deputy Simmons. "James Wilson, Andrew Taylor, Rachel Wilson, we have some questions about fraudulent permits and property documents." As the deputies began reading them their rights, Rachel made one last desperate attempt. "She's mentally unstable. Check the psychiatric hold we filed." Deputy Simmons looked at me sympathetically. "Miss Clark has already undergone a psychological evaluation with the county health department this morning. She's been cleared of any concerns." Lisa had arranged the emergency evaluation first thing that morning, another piece of our counter strategy. Andrew, divided by Tyler, seeing his scheme collapse, suddenly offered, "I'll testify against them." This was all Rachel's idea. She found me, not the other way around. Rachel's face contorted with fury. "You lying snake! You approached us after finding the adoption records." As they turned on each other, the full truth emerged in their mutual accusations. Rachel had indeed discovered Tyler's existence through old family records. Consumed by resentment over my inheritance, she had tracked him down not for family reconciliation but as a partner in crime. The final betrayal cut deepest. Rachel had orchestrated the entire scheme, leveraging family knowledge and connections to target property she'd coveted since childhood. As deputies led them away, Rachel locked eyes with me one last time. The hatred there was unmistakable and had clearly been festering for years, hidden behind family smiles and shared holidays. The cabin, once my sanctuary, now stood witness to the darkest chapter of family betrayal I could have imagined. 3 months passed before I could sleep through the night in the cabin without startling awake at every creak and groan of the old structure. The renovation was finally complete properly this time, with Mike overseeing every detail personally. The bathroom gleamed with new fixtures, and the master bedroom had been restored to its former charm with subtle updates that preserved my grandmother's aesthetic. The legal aftermath unfolded in ways I couldn't have predicted. Andrew Taylor, never Tyler, never my brother, faced multiple charges across 3 states once his identity was confirmed. His cooperation against Rachel and James earned him reduced sentences, but couldn't spare him from his previous outstanding warrant. Rachel and James's marriage disintegrated during pretrial hearings, each blaming the other for the scheme's conception. The investigation uncovered a financial paper trail showing Rachel had been planning this for years, since shortly after my grandmother had updated her will to leave me the cabin. Her resentment had apparently been building since childhood, when our grandmother had shown what Rachel perceived as favoritism toward me. The mineral rights that had motivated their greed proved less valuable than anticipated. Initial testing had shown promising results, but more comprehensive surveys revealed the deposits were smaller and less concentrated than hoped. The neighboring property James had purchased through Wilton Minerals was now in legal limbo, tied up in asset forfeiture proceedings. I struggled daily with the betrayal. Family photos that once brought comfort now raised questions about what lurked behind those smiling faces. Had Rachel always resented me? Were there signs I'd missed? The thought that someone so close could harbor such malice was difficult to process. Mike Reynolds became an unexpected source of strength during the recovery process. What began as professional assistance with rebuilding evolved into genuine friendship. His straightforward honesty and practical approach to problems provided an anchor when my trust in people wavered. Not everyone is looking to take advantage. He reminded me one evening as we sat on the newly rebuilt deck, watching the sun set over the lake. But it's okay to be cautious while you heal. Lisa remained involved as well, helping me strengthen security measures and legal protections around the property. Her expertise proved invaluable in navigating the complicated aftermath of fraud and family betrayal. Most people never recover from these schemes, she told me. The fact that you fought back and won is remarkable. Through Lisa's connections, I discovered distant relatives on my father's side who welcomed me warmly. Unlike Rachel's calculated manipulation, their interest seemed genuine, sharing family stories and photos without asking for anything in return. Cautiously, I began building relationships with this extended family I never knew existed. As summer approached, an idea took shape. The cabin had always been a place of respite and healing for me. Perhaps it could serve that purpose for others who had experienced similar betrayals. Working with a trauma counselor, I developed a weekend retreat program for survivors of family estrangement and exploitation. The first group, just 4 people, arrived in June, nervous and withdrawn. By Sunday evening, something had shifted. Sharing our stories in this peaceful setting created connections that none of us had expected. I haven't felt safe talking about this with anyone before, one participant confessed. No one understands unless they've been through it. The program grew through word of mouth. Each month brought new faces, new stories of betrayal and resilience. I divided my time between my marketing career in the city and these weekend retreats, finding purpose in transforming my trauma into something healing. Mike continued to check on the property regularly, often staying to help with maintenance projects. His company donated materials for an expanded deck to accommodate larger retreat groups. His steady presence helped restore my faith in human decency. 1 year after the confrontation, I received a letter from Rachel, sent from the minimum security facility where she was serving her sentence. I let it sit unopened for days, unsure whether reading it would help or harm my healing process. When I finally opened it, I found not an apology, but a continuation of blame accusations that I had been the favored one, the lucky one, while she had struggled in my shadow. There was no remorse, only justification. After careful consideration, I chose not to respond. Some relationships cannot and should not be repaired. Instead, I channeled my energy into building new connections based on honesty and mutual respect. The cabin, once a symbol of family legacy, had transformed into something more meaningful, a place of healing not just for me, but for others walking similar paths. The walls that had witnessed betrayal now echoed with laughter and honest conversation. The renovation that was meant to drive me away had instead created space for new beginnings. On quiet mornings, sitting with coffee on the deck my grandfather had built and Mike had restored, I sometimes reflected on what my grandmother might think of how events had unfolded. I like to believe she would approve of the cabin's new purpose continuing to be a sanctuary, but for an extended family created by shared experience rather than blood. The path forward wasn't always clear or easy, but it was authentic. And in a world where people aren't always who they claim to be, authenticity had become my most valued currency. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild afterward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of resilience and recovery resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories of overcoming life's darkest challenges. Remember, sometimes the family we choose becomes more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find strength if you're facing your own battles with betrayal.